Hi, folks. This is Herb Stevenson. Um, we're doing a special um, session this time for natural passages. Dale and I have had a trying to schedule to get back together since he changed jobs and also then got ill for a little bit. This is a podcast that I did with Dan Portik on communications, and hopefully that'll be something you'll enjoy. And Dale and I will see you at the next session. So take care and be well. Thanks much. Bye bye.
Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the CommTALK Podcast by BVS Film Productions. Today I have a very special guest and someone I've known for many years. His name is Herb Stevenson. He is a Gestalt executive coach, owner of Cleveland Consulting Group, and I would have to say probably one of the wisest men and well-grounded men I know, person just in general. So, Herb, welcome.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate being here.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Well, Herb, tell me a little bit about yourself and tell our audience, what you do, and let's go from there.
Okay. Simple, basic things. I've been a global consultant for many decades. My brain doesn't calculate that in years as well as it used to. So, when I say a global consultant, I developed Cleveland Consulting Group about 30 years ago. And then before that, I was partner in another consulting firm called Young & Associates. Mm-hmm. And where we did a lot of my work at that time was back in the Reagan years, tells you my age. Mm-hmm. I did turnarounds. And so I got to understand the intricacies of executive leadership and managing the overall business. And I was very young. I was working at a bank, and the federal regulators made me acting CEO. They had a bank that was failing, our bank, and said, "We haven't had a bank fail since 1929. We don't know what to do. There's no records.
Yeah.
So we're going to learn with you." And so in 3 years, I developed an amazing amount of experience that just didn't exist. So I spent the next about 6-8 years doing turnarounds, 10 more turnarounds. And then I decided to leave that firm. And what I was really interested in was the people part, the leadership part. What was it that, some people just weren't going to get it. And then other people had never really been given an opportunity to develop their leadership skills. They had the basics. Mm-hmm. Versus the individual who got put into a situation, and just needed technical skills that they didn't have. So that's what led to Cleveland Consulting Group, where I specialize in two things. It's executive leadership. I do a lot of training that way globally. I've spent time in Dubai, a lot of time in Dubai, oil and gas industry, Ireland, Netherlands, South Africa, all over the U.S. Mm-hmm. So, wide and diverse. I'll be 73 this year, so I guess you could say I've been rode hard and put up wet at times.
Right.
But I still like what I do, and I'm extremely active. As you know, you've been to my place. I have a 80-acre horse farm. And, right. But I do a lot of succession planning as well. Mm-hmm. Having been in the turnarounds, you begin to understand the dynamics of succession planning different than other people.
Herb, when you talk about the turnarounds, for just some of the younger people out there, what exactly is that?
It's taking a failing organization and turning it around into a successful one.
Pretty basic, right?
Yeah, it's basic. It's people in business will understand it very clearly. Mm-hmm. But out of that is one of the things I still do also is culture change. If an organization wants to do a shift in culture, I do that because it's the same thing as working with a failing organization. The culture is also failing them.
Yeah.
So you change the culture into a more positive, learning type of organization, and the impact of it is They can be very successful. You reduce the stresses, reduce the crises. And a lot of it comes down to the leadership style. And as you know, from over the years, from my perspective, it's about presence. If I'm functioning only from what I think I know, instead of my being with that other person, I'm less effective. I'm a talking head telling people how to do things. And there's a lot of that. I call it command and control.
Yeah.
It works because in a failing situation, I'd rather have a commander in place who's telling me put the damn fire out versus though once you get past. Because recently I'm still with the client. The CEO was brought in to change the culture. And when you come in to do a radical change, the CEO is good for about 3 to 5 years, and then they lose their ability to get people to follow, and then you had to bring somebody in to stabilize. Yeah. And we're in a transition now. The CEO came in and drastically changed the culture, really brought people up to speed, more professionalism, and has moved on, and a new stabilizing CEO's come in. So I do a lot of that succession planning, transition, because there's 3 parts. There's the board part of just how involved they're to be without meddling, which is a problem with a lot of boards. How much the CEO, how much support you provide the person leaving, because they suddenly realize they're not in charge anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And so then they can end up meddling as well or creating confusions. And then you have how to help the individual coming in transitioning. And, I have a different opinion that it's out there that you have all those books saying when you're the new CEO, the 90-day plan. I've been around too long. I come from the era of IBM, and when Lou Gerstner came in and took 3 years to write a strategic plan, he says, you can't do anything in 90 days, even if you're insider, because once you're CEO, the world's different. And if you think you actually know in 90 days what has to be done, your chances of failure is very high. And that's why you see so many CEOs turn around very quickly. Disney, Eisner had to come back. Or not Eisner, the other one that's, anyways.
I think you're talking about.
Yeah. And so we're not really paying attention to what is the process. We like to do everything very quickly. So, but the interesting and strange part about me, I enjoy that. I like those dynamics to help people wake up and realize, okay, try it this way. Just try it.
Yeah.
And if we do that, what ends up happening is they have little successes, and next thing you know, we're really shifting the entire process for them. So, I enjoy it.
Okay.
I'm blessed. I'm at a point now that all my clients are by referrals. I don't need to market. I have websites and all that stuff, but
that's the nice place to be. The promised land is what we call it, where people are reaching out to you. Kind of switch gears just a little bit. So our audience is primarily younger people, individuals and business owners that, are struggling, trying to make it, and some of them are successful as well. But I think all of them have one common issue that comes into play, and that's communication barriers. I just want to talk a little bit about what you see as some of the communication barriers between businesses, employees and employees, and supervisors and employees.
We've become too creative and clever in our process to be communicators.
Yeah.
And so that leads to the belief that I have to have a hidden agenda, or you really can't sit down and have a conversation, a direct, clear conversation. So I use short phrases. Some people say, well, tell the truth. And I'd say, no, say what's so when it's so without blame or judgment.
Okay.
Now, I don't care what the communication is. If you can do that without blame or judgment, the other person will probably hear you. The minute we put blame or judgment into a situation, the other person's going to react. They're going to start turning off. They're not going to listen. the second thing that I would say that ties to that is the ability to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Most people at about 20% into a conversation starts listening to their own rebuttal in their mind.
Yeah.
And then they wonder why their wife, children, and employees say, well, they don't listen.
Yeah.
And that is so common. And so if you sit you've heard me say this before, you sit and make eye contact and stay engaged. And when they say something, instead of coming to a conclusion, say, could you rephrase that or say that again so I make sure I understand what you're saying to me?
Yeah.
And the clients that I have that begin to do that and slow the process down end up having better conversations, less fights, less conflicts.
Yeah.
There's a rule out there as far as dealing with conflicts. I forget who developed it. It's called CPR. So without blame or judgment, if there's a problem with, let's just say, an employee, you focus only on what's the content, what's the issue. Making sure it's clearly defined and you understand it. And at that point, you're really trying to find out, is this a skill issue? What is it? And we don't know. So we come to an agreement and we move forward. 6 months later, if it's still happening, we now have a pattern. And a pattern tells us there's a deficiency someplace. Mm-hmm. So either they don't have the skills, they don't have the capacity, which might mean for whatever reason, they're overloaded with this job, or they have issues at home that's preventing them. We don't know. But at that point, that's when HR can step in and saying, yes, we've got a pattern and we need to come up and what's going on that's preventing you from being successful.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is if it continues another 6 months, it's about the relationship and it's time to terminate.
That's interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I see that more with, I deal with a lot of people in, business, just new people that are coming in, and some of them are just super competent. I have great things to say about the youth of this country. They're very intelligent, but there are other ones that, really just jump to conclusions right away, and they're still in their position. They don't leave. And I don't know if that's upper management that just kind of like is waiting to see what happens, or what, but, that seems to be the two types of individuals that I run across anyway.
Well, I think that's true. Pre-COVID, because it started before COVID. The reason I say that is a lot of my work is executive development.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-COVID, it started stopping. There was not as much interest in developing executives or lower leaders. Yeah. Definitely pre-COVID. So it's been maybe 8 years. I don't know what it was. And I'm not saying that's across the board, but I'm saying is generally I found that to be true. It became exaggerated even further during COVID, where it just literally stopped. And then when we came out the other side, it wasn't the same world.
Yeah.
So what that basically means is all of our employees changed a whole lot. Mm-hmm. Many of them realized that based on what happened to them during COVID and they're losing their jobs and things of that nature, they were not going to be as loyal or let's say less forthright. Yeah. And so I've talked to other consultants and a lot of clients. There's a need to now start teaching emotional intelligence again. And it's not saying to get you to comply. It's getting you to look at it from an emotionally mature place of how to deal with it. Yeah. And a lot of the senior executives at the top also have been feeling so burdened since COVID, much of which because they cut back to the core with a number of employees. Yeah. Everybody's just kind of, not everybody, but a lot are treading water. And so I've been recommending my clients is what are you doing for developing your teams? If you don't elevate your teams, your organization cannot elevate. You cannot handle more growth. It just is not a practicality. It's working longer does not allow growth. Mm-hmm. You have to be smarter, better, more efficient. So what are we doing to invest not only in our people, but also into our technology? a lot of people have different opinions about the AI, but there's some really good applications for those who don't want to hire. If they can get somebody who really understands AI, a lot of the things can actually be improved. You know that from the work that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the stuff that I'm doing, I'm testing it. And as you know, I write, one of the side things I do, I write small books, novellas, and trying to come up with a really good preface is more painstaking than writing the book.
Right.
So I just put the book into AI and say,
Yep.
here,
Mm-hmm.
tell me what this book's about.
Right. It's scary. I mean, it's really scary to see that.
It pulls out in a very succinct summary way that's very clear. And then to personalize, then I go back and tweak it and improve it. So do I think that's going to enhance a lot of people's capacity? I think so.
Yeah.
The gloom and doom days of the Terminator and whatever, all the things that are going to take over society, probably not for another 500-600 years.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe faster. And I'm not saying we shouldn't pay attention to it, but what I am saying is let's be realistic about it.
Yeah.
About what it does, what it can do. My biggest concern when I look at that, then this is everybody, all businesses need to pay attention to this. AI does present a massive tech security risk.
Yeah.
What it can do to get into computers and do things. Just like what happened with Microsoft doing a security update batch and it shut down thousands of businesses yesterday.
Yeah, just today, my wife went into her work and she's like, she couldn't even get on her computer, and it was because of what just happened. You know,
right? I would say that there is if it was a hack, it was an AI hack. If it wasn't a hack, that was a massive breach on Microsoft's part.
Yeah.
So if in today's small business and small business leaders, I guess the things that I would say is yes, it's gotten a hell of a lot more complex. Mm-hmm. It's more difficult. And the question is, how do you constantly step yourself out of the weeds? During COVID, we got into the weeds. We didn't know how to get out. If you're not sure what it is and you need a metaphor, then bring a boat in and sit in the boat because there's water in the weeds. And it's preventing you from seeing clearly about what you need to be seeing as running as a leader. Yeah. It's a different challenge. It's interesting because I've been in business for 50 years now. Mm-hmm. And dating myself, we still did everything by typewriter.
Right here. I know.
Yeah. And now
there's disruptors. There's disruptors every 5-10 years, you know?
Yeah. And it just continues. And so the question is, how do we adapt? And my favorite question for all my clients, and this is the same thing for any individual, actually. If you're in a difficult situation, ask the question, what am I not willing to see? It's a different way of forcing yourself to back up and see from a different perspective what's going on. Because we are habitualized animals. We are organic intelligence that likes to take shortcuts. So if this was successful, we'll keep using that until it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, in today's environment, the nuances are what kills you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's some of the things that when I'm working with the different CEOs, if they're willing to do that and willing to listen to that, it starts shifting their perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. So. I have a question about family life. You know, you have some great techniques that I've used that really help when relationships with families, because the two kind of tie together. When you're in work, you have to have a good family life, or it's got to be balanced, you know, from what I'm seeing. So maybe you can, share that a little bit.
Well, I came up with the phrase work-life quality years ago when I was doing some work for the Defense Intelligence Agency. They developed they were not having success moving out of senior leadership into the executive ranks. And so I was working with them and they were screaming they want work-life balance. And I laughed and said, there's no such thing. And I said, that's a ruse been set out there to sell a lot of consulting services and stuff and tell you all this stuff. But the basics is this: what's the work-life quality that you wish? Mm-hmm. If you're an achiever, and you have high standards for yourself, you're going to spend a lot of time at work. That's just how it is. But the question is, what's missing is the quality of home life. I grew up in a family that, and many of us did, is that if after the father got home at night, you were supposed to leave him alone because he worked hard. So basically, he got a pass when he got home. Mm-hmm. And that still permeates a whole lot of people.
Yeah.
And so if you want a quality life, and you and I've talked about this, basic things, quality involves eye contact. So a number of executives that I've worked with that literally had no relationship with their kids and very minimal with their spouse. I said, for a month, for 30 seconds to a minute, when you get home, just pause, don't say anything, just look them in the eyes, soft eyes, don't stare at them like you do at your employees when you're pissed. And
you can see things. You can really see things.
Yeah, now you can see things. You can see facial expressions, nuances about the person being surprised. And they'll often say, what are you looking at? And in some cases, they'll actually be slightly embarrassed because they feel seen.
Yeah.
And the answer is I'm looking at you, and I don't do that enough. And you do it every day. And I have execs' wives contact me, thanking me. But I've had execs come back and say, I haven't had a relationship with my children in 20 years.
Yeah.
Now I do.
Wow.
And the kids yearn it. And at first they're going to be angry because where were you all these years?
Yes.
Don't fall into the place of shaming yourself and blaming yourself. Just acknowledge you at the time you were doing the best you could. But the question is, now that you have awareness, do you want to work-life quality? And this applies in anything. And so if you can do this at home, the interesting part is you start finding out it bleeds over to work.
Yeah.
And people will say, you're different. And if they say that to you, then you know it's working. We think that we have to be the hard ass, or if we're the boss, or the, a stoic employee, which is, you don't have to be blubbering and highly emotional just to be present. So if you're present with people, meaning just, available to them in the moment, it changes things. But our biggest problem we have in today's society is we don't want people present generally. We just want you to be productive.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's where that next level of leadership comes in, being able to do that. I find myself, with my team, sometimes not doing that. And there's an immediate conflict when that occurs, when you do not do the thing that you were just talking about, the relationship, being present with them. And it's just kind of this superficial thing that goes by. We have this big project we have to get done, but you don't see the person actually either hurting or, their mind's on something else or something in their family life. So it's really important. How can people, how can, business owners try to stay focused on that? Is there something they can do to just remember that? Yeah.
Well, I have a very boring phrase. It's called pause, reflect, and choose.
Okay.
It actually is now turned into a full model. Mm-hmm. But it's, in any time you have an engagement, you pause. You don't react, you pause. And you briefly reflect. And we actually do this automatically. But the problem is, it's pause, reflect, and choose, because reflection requires you to think about a appropriate response to the moment, not a reactive response.
Right.
And reactivity is our biggest problem right now, because that's also based on habitualized thinking. Most people aren't aware that 90% of what they think is habitual. But That's why I call us, we're organic intelligence. We create all these horror stories and things to worry about and all sorts of strange things. And if we just pause and say, well, wait a minute, there's no suicide bombers coming after me. Why am I all bunched up?
Yeah.
But I use that frequently. I have CEOs with Post-it notes on their computer monitor that says PRC because they are known for reacting. And it ties to what I said earlier. If you really want a good communication and you want faster problem solving, pause, reflect, and choose. Listen, find out what's going on, what's really being said here, not what you think's being said. Mm-hmm. And it makes all the difference. And another thing that I have clients doing, I have one right now in executive transition, and the new CEO wanted to know what's the two things I should do. And I said, first of all, we're going to come up with 50% reduction of meetings because COVID has created this, everybody has to be at every meeting. And we're struggling to get the work done. And we've lost our communication skills about how to roll out the information down to the levels that are appropriate. Mm-hmm. And I said, so if you really want to have an impact, first thing you want to do is point out, do you want to reduce everything by meetings by 50%? And we're going to, as appropriate, people will get information. Not everybody is entitled to be at every meeting. There is no need for that. The second thing is to come up with a better set of email responses. Anything over 2 sentences goes into a memo. Mm-hmm. No more writing novellas in emails. They don't get read. Even worse, it's a massive waste of energy. Pick the phone up and have a phone call, or in that case, if it requires that much detail, have a meeting. But in the meeting, it will go a lot faster than all the time it took to write. And then if you had 20 people have to respond, look how much time was wasted on a single email. And stop the CYA-CC process. Cover your own ass.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So everybody CCs, and there should be clarity. When do you CC and when do you not? Mm-hmm. Some organizations have put into the reference line, this is important, need response, FYI, if it is an FYI because somebody needs to know this, but they don't need to respond. Mm-hmm. But there's just a variety of things that have evolved, and COVID turned us again into one of those, well, we don't want anybody to feel left out, and they're out in the hinterland, so we'll just CC everybody, and we'll just keep all these things. I'm on the Zoom meetings, everybody's there. So if you're going to be on a Zoom meeting with me, screens are on, phones are off.
Yeah.
Or I'll just block your ass.
The thing I really dislike is when the screens aren't on, and it's just a picture of a person or, you never know if that's really the person, and it just very impersonal,
It's not only that, they're probably doing something else.
Well, and that's my first thing when I talk to anybody new that's trying to either give us business or work with us or not trying to get business from us is you have to have your screen on and you have to do a Zoom meeting with us if you want to do any business. Surprisingly, I would say 70% of the people that try to do that will not do it. They either say their camera's broken. I'm like, well, you did not pass the first test of trying to work with us. It's that simple. So
but I think it's a good rule because it's saying a lot, and because if they won't do that, then that it's probably not going to be successful anyways.
Right. You find that on LinkedIn all the time. If fake profiles that are just trying to gather information and they have ulterior motives behind what they're doing.
Yes.
So, unbelievable. Well, this is a little bit of a twist question. So if you could go back to your 20-year-old self and say, and tell him one thing, what would that be?
It's 53 years ago.
Yeah.
I was in the Marine Corps.
Ah.
I don't know that I would say anything except just keep doing what you're doing. Hey.
Okay.
Marine Corps, I had an advantage. I was an athlete, so I understood teamwork. I was also physically fit. Mm-hmm. So I could excel in those type of environments. I understood the importance of every member.
Yeah.
And my team was a unique team. It was the first creation, what they called the Universal Forward Observer, Universal Spotters. Was an experiment at the time where you were parachuted in and you became the eyes for the artillery, the naval gunfire, and the air fire.
Wow.
And so it was an amazing experience for me because, coming from a farm town, 2,800 people, and suddenly I'm informed all over. I cross-trained with special forces, Italians, Greeks, Turks, Brits.
Uh-huh.
I have an education, cultural education. Well, I don't know that I would do anything more than have advice for myself as a 20-year-old, except keep doing what you're doing and believing in yourself. My favorite song right now is by Cody Johnson. It's called Till You Can't. It's one of the most inspirational things. If you listen to it, if you have a dream, chase it, because the dream won't chase you back.
Okay. Yeah.
If you look at successful people, they do that.
Mm-hmm.
They keep doing it. Even though you have bad days, that dream is what keeps you focused. So a lot of everything I do has come out of something that I dreamt about and created. And that's how this firm became, Complete Consulting Group. Just got formed and focused on getting a 80-acre horse farm on a dead end road.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, the first time I came out and met you, Herb, it must have been, 10, 12 years ago. Imagine, the salesman coming out, going to talk to someone, and you pulling down this dirt road, wondering what the heck is going on. It's maybe a mile or two, and pull into the driveway, and there's these two very large, what I thought were dogs, looking at me. And I find out later that they were wolves. Or some form of a wolf. It was very large, and I think you might have came out and said, "Don't worry, they're not. They won't hurt you." So I got out and I walk in the back, and I see a zebra in your backyard.
That's true too.
How cool was that? So I was immediately enamored by your facility and intrigued to find out more about this person that has all these interesting things. So that was a very unique process. And what kind of animals do you have now? I'm just kind of curious.
We just have horses, and then we have 4 dogs. We have 2. They're wolf hybrids, so they're actually a breed now.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd really call them wolf hybrids. They're more shepherd hybrids. So just they're like big shepherds, but they have the markings and look of a wolf.
Beautiful place.
They love to kiss people on. But when you're on a dead end road and you put out 4 big dogs, it's less of an issue of people messing around your property. But yeah, when you did come out, we had Holly the zebra. That was my wife. It was one of those things I told her 4 times that, no, don't bring a zebra home because we don't know anything about it. And that's when we found out she had 5 votes and I had 4.
Oh, yeah.
And she lived about 9, 10 years. But then what we found out is if there's no genetic defects, a zebra's can live to about 30.
Mm-hmm.
But she had some kind of nervous condition that she was born with. And so it progressively got worse to the point that she was complete distress all the time because zebras are prey animals. So lying down is not good. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
So we ended up having to euthanize her. But yeah, she was.
It was it's something you just don't see in Ohio. I would say true. Just straight up.
That's true.
And then you now have some new endeavors that actually we're working on. It's a podcast.
Right.
And maybe you can talk just briefly through that. Wouldn't mind.
Well, podcast is another one of those is if you have a dream, chase it. So you and I have been talking about doing video work for as long as you and I've known each other, and we've tried different things. Mm-hmm. And then finally I just, said, well, let's just go do this. Mm-hmm. And but the podcast Natural Passages is based on a couple of things. You're aware I also, for 20 years, have been doing a men's program. It's personal and leadership development. We go into the woods 4 times a year for a weekend. It's about presence. It's how do you become the man you want to become fully? You've been taught a whole lot of things. How do you develop who you really want to be? And so that's part of podcasting. The other part of it is I've been working on my Gestalt training presence, and that you've heard me talk a lot about that here today. We've not been taught to be present. We've not been taught to make eye contact. We've been taught to you deflect, defer. It's because we've been in a highly hierarchical society for a long time. I think, or I want to believe, we're trying to move into an engaging society. Now, right now, you couldn't say that politically, but I think that's what the yearning is. It's underneath all this. We want to find a way to feel engaged, appreciated, whether it be where we work, at our family, or in our country. And so the podcast talks about those things, about what can you do from a personal point of view. As you're aware, we saw Dale is my co-host, and
by the way, we'll have links in the bottom here for everybody to go to.
Yeah. So it's been fun, and it's been interesting, and to see where it goes. And but like most things that I've learned over the years, if you're going to chase something, you have to be willing to be patient and not faint-hearted. So my commitment when I said, okay, let's do this for a year and 24 podcasts, that's going to let us know whether or not to continue. And if it takes off, wonderful. And if it doesn't, well, it was an interesting experience.
Right. Exactly.
That's pretty much how I treat life. Mm-hmm. And that's why I write. As another one of those things is, why limit myself? So if I want to write novellas, why not write novellas?
Absolutely.
And most of society says, well, you can't do all those things. Mm-hmm. Why not?
You're limited by your mind. That's the way I look at it.
Well, we are. And so, there are certain things that happen to us that says don't do it. But I like to use the example is I don't know anybody who has not attained fame, whether it be an actor, an athlete, or whatever, who did not have an undying determination to succeed.
Yeah.
To fulfill a dream.
Yeah.
So if you watch any of the television shows in the NFL Network about a football life, and they'll always talk about it at a very early age, that's all they did. Some of them were told they'll never be a good quarterback or whatever.
Yeah.
And end up becoming a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Right.
So it's the human drive is, I guess, what fascinates me the most is if we actually have a belief in ourselves and follow that spark. And it's not saying that you're not going to be knocked sideways and down and people are going to tell you can't do stuff. Because I was told that throughout my life.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's because people don't want you to be disappointed, or in some cases don't want you to succeed.
Yeah.
And I don't worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
What I worry about is the person that I'm talking to at the moment, and am I true to myself? Because I think I've said this to you in the past. My statement on my website for my corporate says, support, unleashing executive and organizational potential.
Yeah.
What that really means is supporting everyone to be more fully who they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's really what drives me for the last 30 years was a realization is that's really what interests me.
Yeah.
Supporting myself to be more fully, all of the various things I'm interested in, and doing the same thing for other people to help them realize. And I have a lot of examples here. Things changed. One that's most impressive was a CEO of a family business, very successful, and he wasn't happy. And so I said, well, what's your dream? And he said, dream to go to a foreign country and teach his kids multiculturalism. And after trials and tribulations and family resistance, trying to get a new CEO in and just various other things, suddenly the conclusion is, why don't we just sell the business? The family's fortune's already in the trusts and in the foundations. So why don't we just do that? Because there was nobody to take over.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened. He moved, has a very successful hospitality business in Central America. He's bilingual. His kids are all bilingual. And he's happy.
Yeah, that's something.
That's the funny thing is people don't believe it's okay to be happy.
Yeah, I see that a lot. I see that a lot. So, anything else you'd like to tell the youth of this country? Maybe a final words of wisdom.
Now, if it's words of wisdom, there's this one of the things that I was taught at a very early age that I tweaked was there are no shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
Which basically meant I had to learn patience. I had to learn to be clear. What is it that I want? Knowing that it will probably change someday.
Yeah.
But that's okay. And, so using myself as an example, there's no shortcut. So I forced myself to sit down 28 years ago to write the first novella and almost got it published. And then it just kind of like went to sleep. I went to sleep basically building the consulting business. And then year ago, February, I said, yeah, it's either do it or don't.
Yeah.
So I hired the editor and the people to get it published and got it published and then said, well, if I can do that, then I want to finish what I was going to do. And then 14 books later.
Yeah.
And 9 of them are published now and 6 of them are in manuscript form. And if I hadn't been clear and also have the determination or the confidence to just say, go do it. It's not going to be earth defining and all the things my family were afraid of is, you're living beyond your raisins, as they would say.
Well, so, you got to do it. You got to do it.
And so there are no shortcuts. And part of that comes with maturity. And I think in today's environment, if I were to say anything, and this, a lot of people don't like this, but the studies have shown emotional maturity has reduced because what was required of children when I was up is you were 18, you left the house or you paid rent.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've come up with all these workarounds where that's not necessarily true. But the problem with it, I see, and many people will disagree, is it doesn't teach responsibility. Because eventually you have to be responsible. You can't stay at home. You have to be able to find a way to make a living. And I don't want to say that across the board and saying everybody has to do that because there might be conditions that you can't. I get that. But that's probably my biggest saving grace was I was taught responsibility at a very early age.
Yeah.
What you create.
Right. Well, Herb, this has been fantastic. I think everybody's going to get some great information out of this, and I appreciate you coming on and spending time with me and our listeners. How can people reach you?
Oh, you could go to Herb Stevenson at clevelandconsultinggroup.com or just clevelandconsultinggroup.com. That's probably the easiest. Okay. I actually answer emails.
Well, you're the one.
Yeah, if it's a legitimate email and you have a question, I'll respond, and it surprises a lot of people. But I'll respond. I don't necessarily I can do exactly what you want me to do, but I'll at least respond and then give you some guidance and direction where you might go.
Great.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest. And other than that, they can they go to the podcast and watch some of those and see if they're interested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, once again, all those links will be in the bottom in the notes today. And if you like what you saw today, please feel free to subscribe to our channel. We always like to have new people come on and hear what we have to talk about and hopefully educate them and improve their lives a little bit. So, Herb, thanks again. We'll look forward to getting this out shortly, and we'll let you know when it comes out.